Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm on time.
Yes.
Great. This is so exciting.
Yes, it's exciting for me as well. How have you been? Oh, internet.
Taking it minute by minute because there's a lot going on with work, and I'm also I work on a UN committee called UN CEDAW, so I'm in session right now. Well, I mean, not this moment, but we're in session. So our sessions are from like 6:30 in the morning to about 10 a.m. because I've got to accommodate people on the other side of the world where it's midnight and everything else. So this is the second week. We've got 2 more weeks to go. So there's a lot going on. Plus there's work, the office. That's my life. And what about you?
Right now I'm on break. I just graduated with my undergrad degree, and then I'm going to graduate school in the fall.
So before we get started, tell me a bit about your undergraduate studies and what you're going to do your grad studies in. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I got my undergrad degree in history at Oral Roberts University in Oklahoma, and now I'm going to the University of Florida to get my graduate degree in Atlantic history.
In what?
Atlantic history.
In which area?
Atlantic
history. Okay. Yeah, great. And where are you going?
The University of Florida.
Oh, great. Okay, nice. It's wonderful. And you want to teach, you want to write. What do you want to do with your history, which I just love?
At first, when I first started my undergrad degree, I was leaning more towards like government and politics.
Yes.
But now I'm leaning more towards researching and writing.
Okay. For like at the academic institution or
more on the academic side.
So you'd like to join UB, for example, or not necessarily?
I'm not sure yet.
Yeah.
Something along those lines. I haven't, quite figured it out.
Okay, that's okay. And are you in Nassau now?
Yes, I'm at home right now.
Okay, and then you head off in August sometime?
Yeah.
To go to Florida. Wonderful. Well, congratulations. You must be so excited about all of this. That's wonderful. Wow. Love it. Well, keep in touch with me on that history because honestly, it's an area that I would love to just, pursue too. History. A combination of history and English would have been ideal for me in so many ways, but that's not it. So.
You didn't end up on that route yet.
Yeah. So I see Dana is online too.
Yeah. Well, we're supposed to start at 6:30. I don't know where Cachet is.
Yeah. So what are you doing for the summer while you're waiting to go off to college?
So I do collegiate track and field, and since I graduated and I'm done with that, I'm still running right now. I'm supposed to be on a national team for the Bahamas, NACAC under 23. We're supposed to be going to Puerto Rico next weekend to run. Then after that, I'm pretty much just probably going to take the rest of my summer and just relax.
So what races do you do? What's your area?
So I do the short sprints and then the short hurdles.
Okay. Wow. So we can watch you on TV. Will that be televised?
I'm not sure if it'll be televised. There probably will be a live stream somewhere, but I'm not exactly sure where at this point.
Okay. All right. Well, good luck with that too.
Thank you.
Did you do it at the collegiate level? Did you also run at track and field at college?
Yeah. Yes, and I'm going to run for my first year when I get to UF.
Okay. Wonderful. Good news.
Well, it's 6:30. Let me just message Cachet. See where she is. But we could get started without her probably. Unless we want to. I just messaged her on WhatsApp just now. But hello to everybody that's here so far. Oh, okay. There we go.
Hi.
Hi, Cachet.
Hello.
How are you?
Say hi. Good. I'm good. I'm here.
Oh, awesome.
I showed up.
Cachet, I just saw your mouth moving. There was no words coming out of it.
Hello?
I can hear you now.
Okay. The whole time, nothing?
No, when you first popped on, it was there, and then it just kind of went off.
Okay. My Wi-Fi is not the greatest, I must admit. So hopefully we stay connected the entire time.
Hey, me too.
Fingers crossed.
I mean, we can probably start now. This is going to be recorded, so I'm planning on posting
Right.
this to like my Instagram later.
Okay.
But so thank you everyone for coming. Right now, Cachet and I are going to be doing a little interview with Marion Bethel. She is, well, I'll have her introduce herself a little bit more and tell you about all her accolades, but she is a published poet in the Bahamas. She is a lawyer. She has a wide range of things that she does, but I'll let her explain a little bit more about her literary career.
You want me to explain it?
Yes.
Great. So first of all, thank you for having me, Sasha and Cachet. I really appreciate that you reached out. It's really wonderful. Writers, authors just really love it when this kind of thing happens, and that we learn either directly or indirectly that there are readers of our work. And so I was really thrilled when I heard from my two daughters, actually, who said to me that you all had posted some stuff about Bougainvillea ring pin. I was like, what? Yeah, so this is all really good. And so I'm really, really glad to be here. And I'm glad that we've connected in this way. And so let's do it. So my journey with writing has been quite, I think probably checkered is a good word for it. I certainly have loved poetry since I was a child, growing up here in the Bahamas. And I would have grown up during the colonial period. So during that time, as children, we were obligated as children to memorize mostly colonial poems. And recite them and perform them for, let's say, a church or at some social event. So this was a part of my life, really, that I enjoyed that part. I must say, I didn't feel pressured or anything. I was just sort of naturally able to memorize and to. So I kind of grew up in that environment of reading poetry. I don't know if any of you have heard of a book called The Royal Reader. It's like an ancient colonial book. It's like a relic, right? So it was from that book that we had to read and memorize and perform. And all the adults were there, and then children too. So I think that's part of my love for poetry. I also grew up, as many of us have in the Bahamas, in a kind of religious family. And so church, my church background in terms of, let's say, the Psalms in the Bible have really helped to kind of sort of give, I guess, indoctrinate into my brain a sense of the lyric and the poetry, because I've always liked, that's one part of the Bible, if I have to choose, that I like the Psalms because of their lyricism, etc. So the whole church experience is one too, where you have that kind of poetic exposure in that way.
Right.
Then, as a child, in school, we played ring play games all the time. So the minute we got out of the class, a very colonial class of memorizing arithmetic, 1 and 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. On the playground, there was a wild abandon, at least that's how I felt about it even then, where we really would shake up and just ring play ourselves to death until time to go back to the classroom, because the classroom was very rigid. And so break time was wonderful. So ring play and all of the ring play songs really have lived on in my life, have lived on in how I see my life and how I move and how I think. I do think in terms of ring play a lot and what it means culturally and how I express it in my work. So poetry has been with me from that time. And then moving on, and I'm just going to go very quickly so that you can ask some questions.
No, take your time. I'm enjoying this a lot.
Okay, so then moving on through to primary school, poetry was very much a part of just me, And in high school too, I really, it became much more formal, of course. But what happened to me, at the age of 10, I actually left Nassau and went to boarding school in Toronto, Canada, at the age of 10. And so
wow.
I found myself in a very Anglo-Canadian environment. I was one of 3, 4 young women of African descent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was only one of 4 Black young women there. I mean, I was primary school. So
yeah, it's very young
child, and my sister was there with me too. So in that first year in Toronto, Canada, away from my family, I actually crashed. I couldn't handle the change of culture. I couldn't handle all that meant, being away from my mother, my father, my siblings, other than my one sister who was there with me. So that first year in boarding school was a complete wipeout for me, emotionally, mentally, academically, everything. But what I hung on to for that year was poetry, which was really interesting. So I can say that poetry saved my life as a 10-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the only class that I really enjoyed as a 10-year-old. It's the only class that I was engaged with. Other than that, I crashed. I mean, literally crashed and couldn't function. I failed that first year in the boarding school. And so I had to repeat it. So they allowed me to repeat again. And after that, I found my feet and just brought poetry with me right through high school. But in high school, I actually began to write poetry, but it was very imitative. So I would just find poets that I liked and I tried to imitate them. And mostly they were, because at that time then, so we're talking about the Black Power movement, we're talking about the Civil Rights movement, we're talking about racial politics, racial justice. And so I really latched on to, this is in high school now, and there wasn't a lot of freedom and movement, but I certainly knew what was going on outside in the United States and in Canada and at home. And so I really latched on to what would have been called at that time the Black protest poets in the United States in particular. And so I would imitate them a lot and try and find my own racial identity within this very white environment that I existed and tried to function. So again, poetry was a mainstay for me. It helped me to express, or to try to express, much of what was happening, how I felt, what I couldn't understand, just intellectually or mentally, or didn't want to talk about, for that matter.
Mm-hmm.
So high school was also a time of understanding that poetry was a tool I could use to anchor my life and understand my life, understand the world through it, and be, and survive. So that's kind of like the beginnings.
Right. Very interesting. I feel like I don't think that I would have expected that you'd been doing poetry for such a long time. It definitely has been something that has traveled with you through your entire life. And I definitely know the royal readers. My grandmother and mom always talk about those. And my mom used to always quote my grandmother, quoting them to her as a kid and being like, well, the royal readers say X, Y, and Z. Right. Not to say that I actually read them, but I just know of them. They're a series of books, right?
Yes, I have it there on my shelf. Yeah.
So does my mom. And it's also interesting that the hymns in church played a very big role. So what, if you don't mind me asking, what denomination are you?
So I would have and that's a really good question that you're asking me, Kashay, because so I grew up, my parents were both Anglicans, so I grew up in the Anglican church. However, my grandparents and my mom's aunts were Pentecostal. So I spent a lot of time with my Pentecostal aunts in what we would have called then the jumper church.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Ring Betty bells, right. So the Pentecostal hymns to this day are very much a part of my blood. I mean,
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Yeah, I'm not. I wouldn't call myself a religious person
mm-hmm.
in the traditional sense at this
mm-hmm.
point in my life. But I would say that there's a deep spirituality that's very connected to
right.
So-called Negro spirituals, the Pentecostal hymns, the Anglican hymns, and another one of my grandmothers was a Baptist. And so as children, we would go both to the Baptist church. We would also go to the Pentecostal church. And I spent a lot of time in the Pentecostal church, actually, during the summers when my parents would send us to our aunts for the summer breaks. So,
mm-hmm.
so yes, the Anglican church would have been the foundation in many ways.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And so the Anglican hymns and the poetry of the hymns is absolutely entrenched in my thoughts, in my thinking.
Right.
So much so that when I went to a writing workshop with I don't know if you know George Lamming or Kamal Brathwaite, who are two of the leading writers in the Caribbean. I went to a writer's workshop with them in about 1995, maybe, at the University of Miami. And it was a Caribbean writers workshop. And a part of what they were trying to get me to do, because other writers had gotten it, was to decolonize our writing tools. Because as I've said to you, my influence was really foundationally church hymns, psalms, and that kind of meter. And most of those are written in what's called iambic pentameter. So these two writers, who are very left and progressive writers in the Caribbean, obviously saw that my work in that way of the meter and rhyme of an English tradition. And so they really encouraged me and challenged me to literally decolonize that kind of rhyme and rhythm, and focus more on what we would call the ring play rhythm for one, and also the hurricane rhythm, which is very much a Caribbean a Caribbean rhythm as opposed to the English rhythm, which is a part of the colonialism, the colonizing tradition that we've had. So, yeah.
How did, I guess my question is, how did you do that? Like, because if you're so used to writing, this certain way, you probably didn't even, I guess, did you realize that were you aware that you wrote that way until they pointed it out?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't aware of it.
So how do you go back at your poems and say, okay,
So you, I would have read widely. I would have read widely in other traditions, for one. I would have understood with every writing genre, whether it's fiction, whether it's the personal essay, whether it's short fiction, long fiction, drama, there are rules and there are tools that you employ in each of those genres. So I would have understood well from high school and beyond the rules of poetry. So the way you decolonize or redirect or transform how you do what you do is you break the rules. You understand them, but then you can break them. And so
right.
Yeah.
One of the things and that goes for it's not just for creative writing. I think that's for painting, that's for any artistic endeavor. I think it also transfers well to other aspects of life and living.
Mm-hmm.
Know the rules and damn break them. I mean, really, break them,
Can I use that as a quote? I love that.
I know, I love that too.
Yeah, as badass young women that you are, I mean, I really think you should I would encourage you to transfer that to different parts of your life. I mean, just break the rules. Clearly, you have to accept responsibility for what you do. You know? Yeah. So all of that is part of adulting and my own maturing is having to take responsibility for my own voice, how I articulate it, what I say, what I don't say, and so part of the decolonization process is knowing. Let's take the English tradition of writing very well, which I had absorbed thoroughly, and just subverting it and turning it around, turning it upside down, and there are many examples of that with Caribbean writers that I know. So I understood how to do it authentically for myself.
You mentioned decolonizing your writing, and I just wanted to know, was it hard for you to start writing in Bahamian dialect, or did you find it easy? Did a lot of people dissuade you from doing that?
Right. So this is a really great question, Sasha, because I was really fortunate to have gone to University of Miami at the time that I did for a writer's workshop with Caribbean authors who were at that time at the vanguard of decolonizing work, whether in whatever genre it was. So these two writers in particular, and I encourage you to look them up. Amal Brathwaite and George Lamming. Enjoyed that. Anyway, so having done my workshop with them, you're asking whether it was whether it was easy or challenging. So everybody around the table was about the same project. We were about the project of decolonization. So it wasn't difficult. And if I could say that I had begun to do that in my own personal life, in terms of my own personal politics. So when I was an undergrad student at McGill University in Montreal, just post the Black Power movement and moving into the African liberation movements of the I had begun, even as an undergraduate student, to engage in decolonization politics, in any case, at the personal level, not in my writing necessarily, but at the personal political level. So I had the kind of what should I say, the intellectual understanding of decolonization through this engagement with students from around the world who were engaged in anti-apartheid politics, divestment politics, decolonization politics, civil rights movement. So I understood it in those ways, and so now I had to, again, make that connection with my writing many years later.
Mm-hmm.
And also during that period, I was very much involved with women's feminism also. So the feminist movement had become very prominent in my life. So all of these kinds of I would just call, well, I could call them counterculture movements or progressive movements. I think that's
Mm-hmm.
how had become part of who I was in my life. And so when I began to write, I understood that, that also had to have an impact on my writing, or I wanted it to have an impact on my writing. So I hope I've sort of responded to what you're asking.
No, I enjoyed that. Was it hard for you also? So I know you have at least 2 of your own books of just your own poetry published. Was it hard for you to get those published? Like, what avenues did you take? How was the process?
Yeah. So I published my first book. My first, I should put it in the passive voice. My first book was published in 1994, and that was the result of having won a literary prize.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1992, I began after this writers' workshop that I was just telling you about with George Lamming and Kamau Brathwaite at the University of Miami. I began to write a book called Guanahani, My Love.
Yeah.
And that was inspired by those 2 writers that I've just posted there, because they challenged me to write about the Bahamas. They challenged me to write about about the Bahamas and what it means to be a Bahamian.
Mm-hmm.
Because at that time, the Bahamian writing was not as well known as, let's say, literature from Trinidad, from Barbados, from Guyana, from Jamaica. Bahamian writers were not as well known in the Caribbean region or beyond. So they really challenged me to write, and of course I knew that also meant I knew that meant a kind of a political kind of dimension to my writing that had to have that. That's what I absorbed. They didn't say it in that way. And so after that workshop in 1991, I guess it was, 1992, I began to write seriously about the Bahamas, Bahamian history. And so that's why I was saying to you, Sasha, if I had to do it again, I would probably study history, Atlantic history and all of that. Because I think history is a really great tool to have for writers. So, people like Salman Rushdie studied history. I mean, many writers that I know, studied history as an academic discipline, but also just as a hobby too, sort of.
Yeah.
And so I think it can inform the work that you do. Anyway, so I sat down and I really was inspired to write about the Bahamas. And so Guanahani, My Love was really my first foray into serious writing, where I had a particular understanding of what it was I wanted to do, inspired to do, and could do, given workshops and other kinds of understandings of poetry. And so I wanted to really look at Bahamian history, and I did in Guanahani, My Love. I wanted to pay homage to the indigenous people of the Bahamas. I thought that was really important. I as a Black woman, a Bahamian woman of African descent, I really am compelled to honor the people who were here and whose lives were wiped out because of colonization. And so I used the original words for the Bahamas, Guanahani, and I also used the names of the different Bahamian islands that were Taino or Lucayan names to
Wow.
And tried in my own way to look at our history and make sense of it for myself and hopefully for our community. So that was Guanahani, My Love, and it's really the love story to the Bahamas and our people. So that was my first. So what happened was I wrote this manuscript, and I sent it into a literary, a writer's. I don't want to call it a contest, but it's Casa de las Americas is a Cuban institution in Cuba, and it has it's a cultural institution coming out of the Cuban Revolution, where Cuban writers would reach out to writers in the Western Hemisphere, so from Canada, United States, right through to Argentina, including the Caribbean, for to send in their manuscripts for this very prestigious Western Hemisphere American big A, not United States of America, prize, and it's called the Casa de las Americas Prize, literary prize. And so I submitted my manuscript there, and it won, my poetry manuscript for Guanahani, My Love, and it won. And so it was from there that that it was published. So as part of winning this Casa de las Americas prize, Americas, didn't spell it right. Casa de las Americas, House of the Americas. And so Casa de las Americas published Guanahani, My Love in a bilingual volume, Spanish and French. So it was from there, that was 1994. And that just catapulted my sort of writer's career, so to speak.
Wow.
Because Casa de las Americas, if you look it up, you'll see it's quite a well-known cultural institution beyond Cuba. I mean, it has a huge reach, and because it has a whole tradition of Hispanic intellectuals, Anglophone intellectuals, Francophone intellectuals being a part of it. So Aimé de Césaire, I mean, including these two writers that I just told, Kamal Brathwaite and George Lamming. So based on that particular prize, it was published. I actually got some money, like $3,000.
Wow.
A lot of money in those days. And in addition to that, word just spread around the Americas, basically, about whoever gets this prize. Yeah. You're then invited to endless readings from Canada right through to Argentina. Wow. Poetry festivals in all those areas. Academic institutions invite you to their universities to do readings. So that happened. So I did a lot of readings as a result of this publication for the next couple of years, and that was exciting. I continued writing, and a lot of my work during that period was published in different anthologies, different literary anthologies. And then, have I responded to which of that? I'm kind of just talking, but have I responded?
No, you responded, but I'm enjoying your talking. I'm enjoying it a lot.
Okay. Right.
I have a question. How old were you when you won the Casa de Americas?
Casa de las Americas. Old. I was old. No need
to say, but I'm just like trying to reference, I guess, reference my age.
I know. You so I was. Yeah. So my older daughter was yes, because she went to Cuba with us to so about 35. No.
Okay.
36.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I think like this is me being like, okay, you have time. Like
I know. So I think that's really funny what you're saying, because I remember I've always been in love with Toni Morrison's work, always. And I've always wanted to write fiction. And then I read Toni Morrison published her first book at the age of 40. So I was like, oh, okay, I've got time, you know. so I understand what you're saying. And then she went on to get a Nobel Prize. So I was like, okay, I can do this too. You know?
Right. I think it's like just sort of referencing like your own personal journey through life and like what you're doing, and you know, things happen in their time.
Right.
Yeah, that was a personal question for
me. I understood it like that, I just as you asked it. And I also remember Alice Walker. I'm sure you know of her.
I know a quote by her that's really, really good.
Yes, at least The Color Purple. So I also fell in love with her as one of my early sort of mentors in absentia. And then I realized that she published her first book when she was like 21, and I thought, okay, oh well, you know, I missed that boat, but so you know, it shifts and changes.
Right, everyone's different.
Right.
So like during your time, like you know, navigating through like your world. So you had primary school, high school. Were there ever any, I guess, unsureness or like fairs? I like obviously, but like were those any like big moments that you had to overcome, whether this was like your right direction type of thing, if that makes sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense. Yeah. So let me tell you about that. So I'm just trying to figure out where to stop, where to enter into the question you're asking, because at this time that I'm talking about, when I won the Casa de las Americas Prize and when I had gone to University of Miami, I was a practicing lawyer at this point. Okay, so I would have been practicing since 1986 at the Attorney General's office during all this time. Okay, so there was always a tension. I've always had a tension with what I was actually doing in terms of my work engagement, my professional life. Let me just call it that. It's two separate parts of my brain, my everything. So it was all a daily tension, and it was ever present for me. When I was practicing law at the AG's office, I can remember days and days and days of thinking, what am I doing here? And just wanting to leave and write and not be there. Yeah, so that was a huge tension. And then I'll just tell you two stories about that tension, which should have given me every indication to have the courage, let's put it that way, to leave law and pursue my writing full time. So when I was studying for the bar in England, in London, I really had a crisis. An emotional crisis. It was the week of my bar exams, and I was reading Alice Walker's In Search of My Mother's Garden and just other creative writing that I loved. And I heard that Alice Walker was coming to London to publish one of her books. Well, sorry, not to publish it, but to promote one of her books called Horses Make a Landscape Look More Beautiful. So she was being honored by the Poetry Society of England, and she was coming to present her book and speak and everything. And this was like moving up into my exam schedule. Anyway, I kept thinking about it. And the day before the beginning of my bar exam, she was going to be speaking. And I couldn't study, I couldn't work, I just couldn't focus because I was studying, but I couldn't focus. And so I walked into the bar exam and I just sat there. I just did nothing. I just sat there. I was just so freaked out by wanting to not do what I was doing, by wanting to go to this event that night and hear Alice Walker speak. So I just sat there and did nothing, didn't write the exam at all. And then I walked out.
What?
Wow.
And then I went to hear Alice Walker speak that night. And clearly I couldn't go back to the bar exams. I mean, I didn't go back to any of them. I just canceled that whole bar exam week, which meant that, of course, I didn't pass, which meant that if I was going to be serious about that, I was going to have to do it another time. So that was a crisis. I went to hear Alice Walker. I loved it. I sat under her nose and just watched her and just breathed in all of the air that she was, it was a very magical time. So after that, I spent the rest of that, I would have been like June or something. I would have spent the rest of that summer holed up in a basement apartment in London, writing the beginning of Guanahani, My Love.
Wow.
The entire summer. I barely ate, I barely slept, and I loved those 8 weeks, or maybe more, 11 weeks of just writing and feeling empowered about my creative journey. Be that as it may, I also knew that come September, I was going to have to re-enroll in the bar refresher course to finish. My family, my parents had put a lot into my academic journey, and I wanted to deliver, well, for myself, but also because I'd made the commitment. So I spent the whole summer writing, and that should have been every, signal that that is what I really was, my soul wanted to do forever and ever and ever.
Right.
So come September, I then re-enrolled in my bar exam, sat it in beginning of October and passed, and came home and started practicing law. So there's been lots of uncertainty. That was just that was a very dramatic period of uncertainty,
Right.
And then there's one more I just want to talk about, is that in 1997, having practiced law for I'd have been about 13 years by that time, I can't remember. 1986, 1997. I was in private practice at this time. I'd left the Attorney General's office, and I had engaged in the abolition of the death penalty movement. I'm an unapologetic abolitionist. I do not believe in the death penalty, and my entire time at the AG's office, I did a lot of criminal prosecutions, and I always felt very conflicted about the death penalty. I felt conflicted about the defendants who were coming before us, because they were always young Black men who were either functionally illiterate or semi-literate. They didn't have the tools to create a life for themselves, and I took some responsibility for that as a citizen of the country. I felt that we were all implicated in the fact that this was happening to a large segment of our population, and we weren't paying attention to it, and here I was prosecuting. In any case, I also had very strong reservations about the death penalty. I never agreed with it. And so when I went into private practice, there was a young man on death row. His name was and he's in the
Sweet Chariot.
Right, Sweet Chariot.
Yeah.
McKinney. Dwayne McKinney was his name. And Glynis Hannah Martin, who was also in private practice, approached me and said, can we defend him together? Because he had been sentenced to death at the Supreme Court level, and his case was going to the Court of Appeal. And I said, yes, fine, I'll work with you to see if we can have his sentence commuted. And so we went to see him in prison, Dwayne McKinney, and that changed my life. Going on death row had really, was just a traumatic experience for me. I'd been before as an attorney, but this time was different. So I met Dwayne McKinney, and it was at that point that he reached out and said he didn't want us to appeal his case. He just wanted to go to meet Jah, because he had become a Rastafarian, and he just wanted to meet Jah and all of that. So in any case, his mother asked us to please, proceed with the appeal on his behalf, and we did. But I spent a lot of time with Dwayne McKinney on death row. I don't mean living there. I mean, I was going to him every day, and we would sing Rastafarian songs together.
Wow.
And he knew he was headed for the gallows, and I just could not. I couldn't. My heart and brain and soul just couldn't handle that. I really resisted it. But he himself, at the age of 23, said he was ready to meet Jah. In any case, we lost the appeal. The day that he was hanged, several of us who were abolitionists stood outside Foxville Prison, and we sang Rastafarian songs. And it was a day I'll never forget. And we went to the pauper's grave in Old Trail Road, where he would be given a pauper's interment. So that whole scene affected me so much that I decided to, I didn't want to be in Nassau anymore. I wanted to leave. I wanted to put down my gown and wig, so to speak, and just do my writing, and I did. So I applied for this fellowship, this writing fellowship, and I got it. And it was at Harvard University at it was called the Radcliffe Institute. Radcliffe was the Women's College of Harvard, and they had a Writers Institute. So they gave me a fellowship for 12 months to come to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and do my writing. So I did. So I left law practice for a year. Again, I should have known that was what I should have made a clean break at that point. So I'm just trying to respond to you in terms of how the tension worked for me and how I dealt with it in some way.
Right.
And my uncertainty about what I was doing in terms of the law and also the writing, because I clearly did not make the full kind of commitment that I could have made to the writing. So so the uncertainty was supreme in every way.
Right.
And so coming out of the Radcliffe Institute at Harvard was Bougainvillea Ringplay. It was
wow.
12 months of complete confinement with my creative imagination, totally funded, and just a piece of heaven, just a pure gift for me. So
being able to have that opportunity to just keep it going.
Yes. And so what was clear to me is that external to my own understanding of myself, there was so much affirmation of what I could do. Other people saw it, and I clearly did not give it the kind of space and time that it deserved.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm responding to your question about certainty and uncertainty. A lot of uncertainty. A lot.
Yeah, it's really interesting that this thing that you're so good at and that you love has literally been walking with you your entire life. And I feel like that is like sort of like the indication, like when you sort of are onto something and you know like what you should be doing. But obviously, like you said, the external factors. But it's nice that you were able to get so many, like, well, these two amazing books out of like that experience. But are you still writing? You must be still writing.
I was gonna ask that same question.
You must. Like,
Yeah.
You're here now. You are aware of the fact that like you're very gifted and like this is something that clearly sets your soul on fire. So there must be a book or a couple that is just there and always having been added to.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Cascade is, yes.
Even if it's for yourself, like.
So since Bougainvillea Ring Play, I have been again writing and submitting my work, my single poems, to different places, and I'm gathering them together now to do a third manuscript for publishing. I'm also working on what I would call a memoir.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually
yes,
yeah,
because your story is amazing. Like I need the whole thing. It's a really good story. Your story.
Yeah, and so after Bougainvillea Ring Play, I just want to segue a little bit and say that I spent after 2009, yes, because it was published in 2009 by People Tree Press in London, Leeds, I should say. After that, I picked up on another creative project that I had begun in 2001. And that was the documentary, which you may have seen, I don't know, on the women's suffrage movement in the Bahamas.
No, I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it, but I've like seen things about it.
Yeah. So in 2012, I decided I wanted to do this creative project, and that was produce a documentary on the suffrage movement in the Bahamas, which took me to history, Sasha, because when I came home from law school in 1986, what I found was that women's history, our history, it was a footnote. It was a footnote, right? And I said, that's just, it can't happen. So I came across these two articles on the women's suffrage movement in the Bahamas, and I was shaken to my core. I did not know about it. It was not taught in schools. Throughout the whole political junkanoo that we have every 5 years or whatever, very little was said about these women in the 40s, 50s, and 60s who basically, got us the suffrage,
right,
and struggled for it. And so I made a documentary and it took about 5 years to do that, along with, do any of you know of Maria Govan? She's a film director. She did a film called Rain, R-A-I-N.
Rain?
Yes.
Okay. No.
Oh, I think I've heard of that movie. I haven't seen it.
Or Kareem Mortimer. Kareem.
Yeah, I know Kareem.
Okay, so Maria, Kareem, and I, they worked with me. I did the historical research, Sasha, and I'm just saying that because I know you're doing history. And found all of this fantastic material on these women of the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and how they struggled to give us the right to vote. And so I spent a lot of time doing that. So that took some of the creative time and energy that I was also using to write. So I'm just kind of accounting for the time in between 2009 with Bougainvillea Ring Play and now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'd be happy to show that film if you want.
Yeah, I was gonna say, where is it?
Well, right now it's it's in an old form of what is it, a DVD. I've got it.
Yeah, or tape.
Right, but it can be easily transformed, and it's often shown on ZNS at certain times of the year, like International Women's Day or something like that.
Right.
But I think we could do it on. I've got a Vimeo link that I'm sure we could upload to
Instagram.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah,
sometime.
same.
So I was just bringing that up to kind of bridge some of the years in terms of your question to me, Kashay, about what am I doing now? And right, yes. So I am doing a third manuscript, and I am pulling together some historical material for the memoir.
Really looking forward to reading that, but also I really admire, like, I think your dedication to like holding on to your poetry while doing, like, you know, a lot of different things at the same time, because I feel like there's, you know, people who would just be like, oh, you know, like, let it go, but I feel like it's something that's been so a part of your identity your entire life, is why you are able to, you know, hold on to it and keep writing all the time.
So tell me a little bit about you all and your writing, and Dana and Michaela and Cameron and Rachel. I would love to hear from all of you as to, you know, your interest in writing and what you all are doing.
Y'all can unmute yourself.
Everyone's probably like panicking right now.
You shouldn't panic after hearing my story.
So funny.
But it's up to you. I'm interested. So.
Huge opportunity here.
Okay, hi, I'm Dana. So I'm an English minor, and I know you mentioned Toni Morrison. I love her work. I get a lot of inspiration from her as well. But I really enjoy writing about colonialism, neo-colonialism, and kind of exploring that. And I also kind of like to write about just my experiences as a young Black woman in the Bahamas. A lot of my inspiration kind of comes just from conversations with my friends. I feel like that's the best way for me. But yes, that's just a little bit about me.
What are you writing? What genre are you using?
Sorry, can you repeat it? Your first.
Oh, I was asking what genre are you writing in?
I just write in first person, just non-fictional essays.
Yeah, you mean the personal essay?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
You have any question?
Well, I do know that it must have been a huge responsibility making that documentary. So how did you, well, what was the process of making it? And how did you kind of, at what point did you say to yourself, yes, this is what I want to share with the world. This is, because like I said, it's a huge responsibility. So how did you take that on? And then how did you move on from that? And how were you ready to share that with the world and with the Bahamas?
Right. So when I came home in 1986, I really wanted to explore women's history in the Bahamas, in particular, women's feminist history, and and put on the record what we have done historically to bring this country to the place where it is. You know, as you are aware, the male narrative around the modern Bahamas is very masculine, and the narrative.
Yeah.
The men. So when I came home in 1986, I was determined that I wanted to make a difference in that way. And so I formed a group, actually, a women's feminist group called DAWN, DAWN, and it's an acronym for Developing Alternatives for Women Now. And we connected with other Caribbean feminist groups and did our work on many levels in terms of women in the Bahamas, in terms of the sexual offenses that were primitive here. We wanted those to be advanced. We looked at different reproductive rights that women didn't have in the Bahamas, whole issues around gender-based, around violence against women. So we did a lot of work around incest, good touching, bad touching with children. So a whole plethora of issues that affected women and children. And I also was very keen, as I've said, on women's history in the Bahamas. And so I began to do research on that and realized there was this movement post-World War II of women, Bahamian women, and it just didn't get, it was a footnote to our history. And I wanted to lift it from that footnote and turn up the volume on it and just make it central to women's lives in any case in the Bahamas, and that we pay homage to these women and use the kinds of tools that they use to advance our own human rights. And so I engaged. I knew I didn't have the technical videography skills or film skills, but I certainly had the desire and the motivation and the historical research. And so I asked two young women, my niece was one of them, and if anybody knows Gabrielle Mashevitz or Natalie Bethel, they did a lot of the research for me, the historical research, and came up with old colonial documents of that period, which further illuminated the work that these women did. Doris Johnson, for example, was one of the leading suffrage women. And so I wrote the script. So my writing did come in handy, not poetry, but writing. So I wrote the script for the film, for the documentary, and Maria Govan and Kareem Mortimer did the filming, all the of the interviews that I did with these people, and we then sat down and we put it together. I mean, literally told the story chronologically from post-World War II up to 1962 when women were for the first time. So it really was, again, it was another period of great creativity, imagination. I didn't sleep, I didn't eat, I just loved
creating.
Yeah.
It won some at some film festivals. Actually, it won some film awards, which was good. And that was another opening for me to do academic tours. So I went for like Spelman, Mills College. I mean, Harvard. I went to several universities throughout the United States and Canada, University of Toronto, and showed the film and talked about it, University of the West Indies. So it was a wonderful period. Yeah. So I'd be happy to share it with you all.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in seeing it. I have a question about, like, I guess your writing about like the politics in the Bahamas. Was that ever difficult, speaking on like the political landscape?
Well, I think it's interesting because if you use poetry to do it, well, politicians aren't listening, if that's what you're asking. I mean, they're not tuned into that kind of they're tuned into a very sort of, the usual political discourse, which you're
right.
Yeah. So if you're using creative writing, and I know several writers. I mean, we had writers workshops here. We have small writers communities, and so and when we do our readings, it's of no moment to the politicians, clearly, but it does make a difference to the audience who is listening, So, for example, when I read my and I think when you talk about politics, you're probably talking about partisan politics, PLP, FNM.
Mhm.
Right. So that's one level of politics. But if I look at the poem that I wrote for Dwayne McKinney, for example,
Right.
right, that's another kind of politics, where I'm, against the death penalty and I'm speaking out about it.
Right.
So I think it's very interesting to use the creative tools to make statements, because when I read that poem years ago, when I was very active with the death penalty, against the death penalty, people really, really were emotionally moved by it. And it made a huge difference than just talking about the death penalty.
Right.
Because it gave this young man a humanity and a face and his dignity, which is very different than saying politically, why are you killing this person? Why is the state?
Right.
Why does the state have the right to do this? The death penalty never made a difference. I mean, people still kill even now. So I certainly had my own political views about the death penalty, and I also put them forward in a political kind of way when I was with the group. But when I used poetry to do it, or even another personal essay that I wrote about my engagement with Dwayne McKinney, people listened differently. So creative work touches people at the emotional level.
Yeah. Oh, right.
In ways that political propaganda or political positions, which I do have, cannot ever do. So it makes a difference.
That's a really good point. You gave the political view actual emotion. That's very true.
Dana had another question for you. Dana.
This is just going back to your documentary, because I know film and poetry, of course, they're both art forms, but they're very different. So are there any other mediums that you want to explore in the future? Do you see yourself doing any other genres?
Yes. So the personal essay is the creative nonfiction, or the personal essay is one that I absolutely love. I really think that is a form that can really connect with audiences and people when you speak your own truth, when you speak from your own authentic experience, and you're not speaking with that kind of political propagandist kind of point of view, but you're owning your own vulnerabilities, your own weaknesses, and your own strengths, and you're sharing those with a public who can also identify with some of what you're saying in any case, So I love the personal essay, and I've written several. Some of them have been published in anthologies. So that's one that I would like to do more with. The drama or the play is not one that I've ventured into, and I've done one or two short stories that have been published. So short stories, I also think are a great creative tool that I've also explored. I think the play or the drama is one that I've not really worked with at all.
I had a question. So this is my second time around reading Bougainvillea Ring Play, and I'm not sure if I really noticed it the first time, or if I just I feel like the more you read things, the more stuff stands out. But I noticed that a lot of your poems come from personal experiences, or at least personal experiences play a large part of your poetry. So how does it feel to bare yourself, or put yourself out there?
So it broke up a little bit, Sasha. You're asking what was the question?
Sorry. So how does it
for me?
How does it feel to I don't want to say bare your soul, but put yourself out there and put your personal experiences out there for the public?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, so, well, a little story first. So when on that fateful day that I sat under Alice Walker's nose and didn't sit my bar exams and was totally mesmerized by her. After she spoke, I went up to her. I got in a line up to go up to her to have her autograph the book that I had bought. And I got, and it was a long line. I got off the line because when I got up to her, I became tongue-tied. So I went back on the line and I got up to her, and this time I just got my courage up and I said to her, how do you write what you write? How do you bare your soul, and how do you also talk about your family members in your work? Without being disrespectful to them, and how do you honor your own experience and feeling? Because she talks about attempting suicide, for example. She talks about having a termination of having an abortion. Yeah, so I wanted to know the same kind of thing that you're asking. How do you do this and keep going? And she said to me, you want to be a writer, right? And I said, yeah, kind of, sort of. And she said, yeah, you do. And she said, well, if you want to be a writer and you're going to write seriously and authentic, whatever you do it with love. With love. And I know that may sound a little, or whatever, but she meant it. She said, whatever you do, you're writing, bearing your soul, writing about your family, with perhaps opposition from them, even because you're telling things that are family secrets, maybe, or your own secrets. She says, do it from a place of love, just a love of yourself for one, and a love of the community that you are wanting to engage in. And so I've kind of tried to understand what she meant by that. And so when I write about myself and my own experiences, I try to honor the experience. I don't always, I try to honor it. I try to give it the kind of understanding and perception as best I can, and to be honest about it, for one, but to honor it as an experience that I have had, and that hopefully it has helped to transform and move me to another place in my own process, and that this is my story, this is who I am, and we're all individuals and we all have our own processes and journeys, and so if you don't honor your own story, who is going to do that? So so it's about trying to have enough respect for your own self, even though I beat up on myself a lot, and probably the most critical voice is my own voice. Nobody else's. And so it's another very well-known writer that I really love, Audre Lorde. I don't know if anybody knows Audre Lorde. Yes.
Yeah.
She says, and I've met her, heard her speak and everything. She says, your silence will not save you.
Wow.
Don't do that. Your silence will not save you, and that is your projecting your own voice and speaking your own truth may well save you. So I take that seriously too. I really do. Your silence will not save you, will not protect you.
Sure.
Wow. That is very profound.
Yeah, I really recommend. I recommend work with all her books, and I read.
It's really interesting because I feel like, although we're talking about poetry, I feel like everything that you're saying, even this quote, can really be used in any aspect of someone's life, whether you are a writer or not. Just like in terms of navigating, like so much things that you've said already has been such like great pointers. You know, in my journey of, I guess, figuring it out, because I feel like we're all just like, and I imagine that everyone who's watching is just, you know, a young person trying to figure it out, like trying to get to where you are. And like even your story in general is so honest. And I feel like it resonates with probably all of us, because there are like difficulties, fears, uncertainty, and then look at you, like you're, you know, where we are wanting to be, you know, having conquered so much. And I feel like it really just sort of goes to show that like just the navigation process, I guess, works out, you figure it out. But I really like that quote a lot.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, you do figure it out, and I honestly believe in. I've had great support of other women. I really I lift up my friendship community, because it is women who have surrounded me and kept me honest, for one, and also supported in terms of keeping on, because there are times when it's not easy, not even for any of us. And, but I really take great comfort in my women friendships that have helped me through my journey, and continue.
Right. Amazing. Does anyone have any other questions? If you don't want to come on camera, you can type a question and we can read them from the comments. So if you do have a question and you want to just throw it in there, I'll read it, or Sasha can read it. Waiting to see if anyone's typing.
That's okay too. I kind of know that feeling.
Right. So one of the things, the themes that I found in Bougainvillea Rainplay is that you talk about hurricanes.
Yeah.
That's like, I think that was like 3 of the poems that you wrote about. And one of them was Hurricane Floyd. And I remember that I was like maybe like 4, but I remember it very vividly. And then Hurricane Andrew, which I was not born for, but I heard about it. I heard that it was really bad. So I guess my question is, were you like, were these like from your actual experience with these hurricanes? And I guess looking back on your already written poems about these hurricanes that already passed, how was, I guess, your reflections on hurricanes post Dorian?
Yes.
Oh,
it's a very heavy question.
So, right. So these hurricanes, I certainly lived through them. Yeah, and I think in a way trying to use. I was very aware of each of them as it was happening, and I was also trying to see how I could use the metaphor of the hurricane for what may have been happening at the very personal level, which
right.
also be the personal hurricane, and how that meets with the physical hurricane that is actually taking place. And so, yeah, so for each of those hurricanes, I was exploring at the same time some other emotional
right.
Issues or conditions, situations that I would have been engaged in, and using the actual hurricane as the entry point into that emotional landscape.
Right.
And so Dorian, for example, I just found that so apocalyptic. I mean, just
Right.
so huge. I mean, I certainly have written some things on paper in response to Dorian, but I've not revised them, edited them, or published them in any way. It's such a major experience for all of us in every which way. And yeah. So, but I do have some Dorian writings that I've not published.
Right.
I certainly had some creative responses to it.
To those, right?
It's like what is it? 3 goats and a.
Oh yes, 3 goats and a chicken.
Something like that. I mean,
a duck.
That's a poem. I mean, you know, so because that was an amazing statement that was put out after Dorian, and I could not believe it. So a lot of Dorian was unbelievable, you know, in terms of its scale and its impact and everything.
So, sorry, not to jump to another question, but when in the process of, I guess, coming up with your next piece or a piece that comes to you, is it just based on, like, you know, you're going through your normal day-to-day and something pops up and there comes words that flow through your mind? And
yeah, what is the writing process like?
Right, like, because obviously everyone knows that 3 goats and a chicken, like everyone heard that. But the fact that, like, you heard that and was just like, that's something like that came into your mind, it clearly, you know, shows that you see the world through a lens of a poet.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. And so I think it's a good question that you're asking, because there are several things. So things like that come to me, I will write them down and go back to them. Right. So the inspiration for me can come in any form, and I can record it. But there's a part of writing which I understood later is the discipline of writing. So when I actually produce something like Bougainvillea Ring Play or Guanahani My Love or other things, it takes discipline. So it's not just a moment of inspiration for me and I sit down and I write. I literally have to set aside the time. So for me, the most creative time for me is 4 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. to, let's say, 7 a.m. So these books that I produced are done during that period, quite frankly. And it's discipline. It's like day after day, you do it. And so inspiration has come in different kinds of ways, and I've recorded it, but the actual production and work is one that requires discipline. And I've seen that with other writers, because I mean, different writers have different styles, obviously. But many writers will tell you that it's a day in, day out work, of a scheduled work that makes the product. You know, some writers write sort of skittishly, but you know, most writers that I know actually have a schedule of writing. And
that's so interesting, because I think that goes to show how I think society, and clearly myself, view creatives. That is just like, aha, I'm going to paint a masterpiece today, and here I am, Picasso. But no, really just being like, this is what I'm doing, and that's it.
It's a process,
daily work, a daily discipline.
Right.
I think for me, I get more inspiration and I'm more inspired once I am in that zone, you know.
It flows.
But if I don't pay attention, in other words, if you don't, if you disrespect the inspiration and don't pay attention to it, I will lose it, you know. And it doesn't come. It comes to me when I am disciplined and working with it.
That's interesting.
That's the way it comes to me, you know.
When you're committed to this is what is happening. Yeah.
My commitment is real, authentic, and steady, and purposeful. That is when it really happens for me.
Wow.
It's not in fits and spurts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I like write a little bit. Very like not committed, not disciplined. But every time I do, I'm just like, why is this not profound? But it's because it's for this what you're saying, and I'm not committed and just I'm expecting that something great will come from me just being like, I'm gonna write this down and it should flow, but I'm not in that, you know, state of mind. So yeah, that makes so much sense.
For me, it makes complete sense, you know.
Yeah.
I keep my tools sharpened and oiled and creative by consistent work with it.
Right.
If you neglect something, it will leave you. And I'm talking about the creative process. You know, neglect
right.
You're not honoring it. Therefore, why should it even be with you?
Yeah. That's what they say about talents, that if you don't use your talents, they will just
get dull, leave. Yeah.
Bury them.
Wow. Sasha, do you have a question? I feel like I'm just like
No. I don't actually. Some like the question you asked was like the question is a similar question I was going to ask. So if nobody else has any questions, I mean, we, Miss Bethel, we would like you to read like a poem or two if you have time, and then I mean we can end it because we have already been on for almost an hour and a half now, but I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Oh, thank you. Is there a particular one you would like? That's one way to do it, or I can just choose one. That's another way to do it.
I think.
I feel like you choosing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me choose. I'll choose Bougainvillea ring plate just because I'm trying to find where. Just because. So for me, I mean, I'm totally enjoying the poincianas that are everywhere right now. I love poincianas. They're just so brilliant. Bougainvillea are also one of my faves, just because for me they represent a certain kind of freedom, a certain kind of up in your face confrontation, and just, you know, this is me, and take me as I am. Now you can get the scissors and you can cut Bougainvillea and shape it into these, you know, forms of worship. Almost 2 days later, the next day, there's some tentacle that's just like coming out, you know, like just not even paying attention and doing its own thing. So so Bougainvillea ring play, and you know ring play, so I don't need to explain that. But often when I'm reading to non-Bahamian public, I've got to explain Bougainvillea, I've got to explain ring play, what ring play is. Okay, so Bougainvillea ring play. This me right here inside the ring in March, April, May, springing from concrete tar sand, parading, passion purple, ungodly colors waving, cores of pink, cream, orange, showing my motion to you unsolicited in months of dry rain, sighing. Ring center, I come to you straight, shaping vision beyond sugar in a plum, winding my waist tight in your face, clinging to your fence, I ain't shame, mounting it from rock and gravel, unhedged hips fall and rise, spreading limbs all over your wall. This me now, right here, outside the ring, even in June, July, August, fixing to catch the color of your dream, playing biggity with your emotion, working up myself around edges of islands, cascading, even when Poinciana throw blood clots, unconsoled, in full sea green. I just keep on coming. Jumping back in the ring, I ain't shifting for no one. Limboing up the shade, under the shade of a dilly tree, climbing up woman tongue and Gannett, wrapping arms around Cersei vine, rushing to inventions of a lonesome conch shell, fixed by tongue-tied drums, conga drums, spinning, we move in circles, driven, shaken, freed.
So beautiful.
Thank you. I'll read one more, which I really love this one. So just a little short explanation. I used to go walking on the strip out by, it wasn't Bahamian then, another hotel, just the strip there, along long time ago. I used to go there every morning, 5:30 in the morning when it wasn't too dark. And so I met this, one morning I met this woman, and she had a bird, a tobacco dove, in the crook of her arm. And I went up to her and said, what's happened? What's wrong with it? And she was, I really don't know. So, but I just really identified with this bird that couldn't fly, it was wounded. So this is the poem. So it's called Tobacco Dove. I was on the road doing what tobacco doves do, skidding on sleepy, dewy streets, chasing love on high-tension voltage wires. I pecked at pleasure in lightning storms and rain, limboing low under barbed fences, gulping desire in thin air. I was no prisoner dove on a flight of fancy, flouting and flaunting a plumage of atrophied wings. I knew the cost of flight, the craft of steering clear of spotless glass, the geography of mangrove swamps and smoldering fires of pine barrens. I believed in the art of a sleight of wing. I was to take off on time before the reverse of that wheel, a game I played. I was so slow that morning. No nails snared in melted tar. What held me captive a second too long as the tire turned on my wing? I was on the road, doing what tobacco doves do. Olive-bearing trees don't grow here, and I wasn't no messenger for the dried out earth of Noah. Tobacco dove.
Wow, thank you for that.
It's interesting because with Tobacco Dove, I had written it in the third person initially. I mean, as my first, when I was first putting it down, I wrote it in the third person. And then I realized, this should not be in the third person. So I put it in the first person. And that's kind of like responding to the question that you asked about how do you talk about yourself and bare your soul. And so I realized that third person was not authentic. Right? The first person, yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to be on this. And I want to thank everybody who came to watch. I want to thank Kashay for agreeing to do all this for the month and stuff with me.
Of course.
I enjoyed it a lot, and I'm grateful that I got to connect with you all, and I hope to connect with you in the future about maybe some other things. But if nobody else has any questions or anything like that, I think we can say
one more question.
Okay.
I'm just full of them. If you had to give advice to any Bahamian or any Bahamian writer, what would it be?
Oh boy.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it is a good one. So to Sasha and Rachel and Sarah and Cameron and Dana and Kashay and Sasha. There are two Sashas, yes? Yes, there's Sasha Smith and then there's Sasha. Great. So to all of you, if you want to write, then you just have to do it. Honestly, you've got to just, and I really encourage you. We need you to write. We need each of the Bahamas, our country. I need it personally too, you know, so it's not, I don't want to leave it just at the level of country and community, but
Right.
we need to hear from you young women badly, with your creative imagination as to how our community needs to transform itself and live through the work that you're doing. So I just want to encourage you. I don't know that I've got advice, but if you're going to write, it really is about making the commitment. And I've shared my story with you about my ins and outs with commitment and other distractions and other commitments. Because as you move on, there's a time when different things take priority in your life. It may be a relationship, it may be children, it may be your work, but it's all in your hands, you know, as it is in mine. And I continue to make my own decisions about how my own life evolves. You know, we're all the architects of our own lives. It's your story. You have to tell it. Don't let anybody else tell your story for you. So, and you get to write your own story. You get to write your own life and tell your story through your own creative imagination and tools. So if writing is what you want to do, or any other pursuit, you have to make the commitment and honor it and pursue it with passion and love. And with passion and love. And just, you know, honor yourself, and it'll all fall into place in terms of people around you, your community, your country, and the world. Because the world needs to hear from each of us. I mean, that's partly why we're here, is to make our contribution to this life in our own authentic way. There's only one of you, Sasha, only one of you, Cache, Dana, Cameron, Sarah. Each of us has to do what we do. Here to do and inspired. So I think that's the kind of inspiration I'd like to leave with.
That's going to help a lot of people.
Good.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I think that's
So
a great place to end.
See you again. This is not the last time, right?
No.
Okay. Well, have a good evening and blessings and many blessings.
Yes, have a good night.
Okay, take care now. Good night.